How does one prepare for the new year? The Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, we read the portion of Nitzavim. And the portion of Nitzavim gives us strength to be vindicated in judgment. It gives us strength that the sentence is for life and for good. We begin with the opening words of the Pasha, Atem Nitzavim Hayoim Kulchem. Today, all of you are standing before God. Today is the day of Rosh Hashanah, in the day of judgment. Roshechem, Shiftechem, the heads of your tribes, until Choyte Veitzecha, the chappers of the wood, and Shoyev Mimecha, the drawers of the water. Everybody, all 10 levels of people, from the most intellectual to the most practical, all of us stand before God on this day. But Nitzavim means we are standing with strength because we are all going to be blessed with a Shana Tova Umesuka, a year that is good and a year that is sweet. So the Torah, which is the blueprint of creation and is the contract of life, tells us and guarantees us that we are going to be okay. But what are we supposed to do? How do we do this? And so we look to the end of the parsha. The end of the parsha tells us in verse number 19. It says over here, you should know God places before you habracha va'klala, blessing and curse, and life and death. And then it goes on to say, uvocharta b'chaim, you shall choose life. L'man tichi ata v'zarecha, so that you shall live, you and your children. Now, what does it mean God tells us choose life? Isn't that obvious? If God says, I place before you today blessing and curse, life and death, He needs to tell us you shall choose life. Isn't that something which is obvious? Now, the Ramban says that it's really an Eitzah Tova, it's an advice. God is making a suggestion, like, I would like to tell you it's a good idea to choose life, and it's an encouragement, inspiration. But Rashi gives us a long interpretation to what this means. The final Rashi in the portion of Nitzavim says, you shall choose life. It's not only a suggestion, but rather, says Rashi, Ani moida lechem. God says, I am instructing you, I'm commanding you, that you shall choose for yourself the portion of life. Like a person, a father, who tells his child, choose for yourself a good portion in my inheritance, in my field. And not only does he say that, but he takes the child to the best part, to the best portion of the field, and he says, this is what you shall choose for yourself. And then Rashi goes out of his comfort zone of being the interpreter of the Chumash, of the Torah, and now gives us an interpretation in Tehillim. And he says, V'al-zeh nemar, this is the meaning in the verse of Psalms. Hashem menos chalki v'choisi ata tomer garali. That God, you have allotted my portion and my cup, and you have established my lot. And then he goes on to say, what does that mean? It's poetry, but what does it really mean? Says Rashi, you take my hand and you place it on my lot, saying, take this, take this. And this is the final words of the Rashi, of the Pasha of Nitzavim. These are the final words before we enter into the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. As we are reading the Pasha of Nitzavim, Rashi ends by saying, take this for yourself. Why this long, detailed Rashi? What is Rashi coming to tell us here? And as we always begin to look into Rashi and ask the question, what is bothering Rashi? Rashi is coming to answer a question here. What's the question that he's answering? If you look into the verses in this last chapter, in verse number 16, already it says, in verse number 15, it already says, see, I place before you today hachayim vesatoiv, life and good, veshamoves veshara, and death and evil. So in verse number 15, God is telling us, not only do I place before you life and death, but if you didn't know this, life means good. The definition of life is good life. And if you want to have good life, then choose life. And death is something which is bad. And therefore, don't choose bad. But he doesn't tell us what to choose. He simply says in verse number 15, look, I am placing this choice before you. Life, which is good, and death, which is bad. But here, in verse number 19, he takes it a step further. He says, I testify you before you today, heaven and earth, hachayim v'amaves, life and death I place before you. And furthermore, bracha, blessing and curse. But here, not only does he place it before us, but he also tells us, and he instructs us, Uvacharta v'chayim, you shall choose life. Now this is what is bothering Rashi. Why must the Torah tell us choose life? Who would not choose life? If you're a healthy person and a normal person, and I tell you life or death, you're going to say life. So why must the Torah instruct us? Uvacharta b'chayim, you shall choose life. And here comes along Rashi and he says the following. It's like a father telling a child, choose a good portion for yourself. Now, why does the father have to tell the child, choose a good portion for yourself? Isn't that obvious? Now again, every detail in Rashi is perfect and explicit. Why does Rashi give us an example of a father and a child? Not a person and his friend. A person tells his friend, you should know, I'm giving you a piece of my inheritance, choose a good piece. Because we're dealing here with the love of the father to the child. That love and that trust is unique. You don't have that between friends. It's a love and a trust that a father has to a child and the child has for his father. Now, the fact that the father needs to tell the child, choose this portion, even after he tells him, choose something good for yourself, he has to bring him over to the portion and say, takes him by the hand, as Rashi says, and says, take it, implies the following. That what? What does it imply? It implies that it's not obvious. It's not obvious. If it was obvious, the father would not have to actually bring the child to the actual location and take him by the hand and say, hold this. This is the portion you shall choose for yourself. And we're dealing here with the child who has to trust the father because the child might do something else. So what's happening over here? Why must God, who's our Father in heaven, before Rosh Hashanah, tell us, Uvacharta b'chayim, I instruct you, and I take you by your hand to choose life? And the answer is, that it's not obvious. When we look in the world around us, what is truly good and truly bad is not always obvious. Sometimes we think it's good for us and it's really bad for us. Sometimes we think it's bad for us and it's good for us and it's the right thing. And that is why the Torah is our instruction book. And Torah tells us how we should live our life. And God is telling us, you should know, life is good. And when you do the right thing, this will give you life. And when you do the wrong thing, it's going to bring you death. And even though it's not obvious to your eye, because all your friends are doing other things, and they're telling you, this is the right thing to do, don't listen to them. Trust me. I'm your father. I love you. I care about you more than them. And if I tell you this is the right thing, you can rely on me because I love you. And I only want to give you the best. Now, who's our Father? God in heaven. He's obviously a lot smarter than everybody else. And He truly loves every single one of us. As the Baal Shem Tov says, the love that God has for every single Jew is a love of a father to a child, to an only child. And not only an only child, a child that was born to the father and mother at a very old age. So for many years you were waiting for this child. And when that child is born, you're going to spoil that child. You're going to give that child everything. Because you waited and you prayed for that child for years. That's the love God has for us. And therefore comes along Rashi and it says, you should know it's not obvious. Yes, it's very simple and easy to say, I'm giving you good and bad, life and death, choose the right thing. But we don't know what to choose. So you should know God takes you by the hand. And He says, choose this. Why? Why must God take us by the hand and say, choose this? Because we have a very good argument. And we can say, God, really? Is Torah life and good? How come so many wicked people are successful? And how come so many righteous people are suffering? So therefore God says, trust me. Because in the end you will see that I am correct. Today perhaps you have a question. But in the end, those that are righteous will live forever through paradise, through the coming of Mashiach. And those that are wicked and sinful will pay for their sins. But we say to God, God, we're human. We can't wait so long to the end of time. We need now some evidence. So God takes us by the hand. And He shows us, look, even in your daily life, look at the miracles. Look at the blessings. Look at the mercy that God bestows upon you every single day of your life. And when you do the right thing, and when you follow Torah, and you do mitzvahs, you see blessing. Maybe not always, but from time to time, God takes us beyond the veil, and we see all of these beautiful things in our life. So that's why, says Rashi, the Torah has to tell us, Uvacharta b'chayim. It's not enough that God places this before you, but He has to take you by the hand. Now there are two terminologies here in Rashi. One is choose for yourself. And number two is you established my lot, my goro. These are two terminologies. Choose means intellect, and lottery means beyond intellect. When you buy a lottery ticket and you win, it's not because you're better. And it's not because you're smarter, because you were able to figure out the numbers. Don't kid yourself. So what does it mean, God is my lottery? In Judaism, there are two levels. And both of these levels are responsible to connect with God. Number one, we connect with God on the level of choosing, using our intellect. And then there's a level beyond intellect, which is lattery. And in truth, we start with logic, looking into our daily blessings, looking into all the miracles that God performs for us. But then there's a level of passion and the level of love that's beyond intellect. We reach this level that we're serving God and we're following the Torah, not because it makes sense anymore. It's not about the logic. It's the love beyond the logic. And therefore, God says, number one, you shall choose life because it's logical, but I hope you'll reach a level beyond logic. That'll be a passionate love. You don't have to think about it anymore. And this is the introduction to Rosh Hashanah. This is the introduction to the new year. Because before we blow the shofar Rosh Hashanah, we tell God, Yivcha lanu. It's not saying choose us. And the way God chooses us is the way we choose God. So if we choose God only on logic, God chooses us on logic. If we choose God beyond logic, God, you are my lottery, then God chooses us also beyond logic. So this is the message that Rashi is telling us right before the holiday. Even though God says, choose what you like, at the end of the day, being a good father, he takes us by the hand and says, I'm telling you, take this one. This is the right thing to do. A beautiful story that really brings this message home. As many of you know, it's customary by Chabad Chassidim numerous times throughout the year to leave Crown Heights and to go on Tahalucha, to go on a trip, on a march to different communities and bring joy of the holiday to those communities. There was a group of Bachrim, of students that went to Williamsburg. And they came into the shul of the Lanzuter Rabbi, Lanzuter Rav. And they were getting up to speak before Maitiv service. And the president of the shul said, no, I don't want him to speak. Who is he? We're not Chabad over here. I don't want this rabbi to speak. The Rav made with his hands, like, I'm the rabbi here. I'm in charge. He's going to speak. And the president stormed out. Okay. In the meantime, he got this young man to get up and talk. After the man gave his fiery talk, an inspirational talk, some of the congregants came over to the rabbi and said, Rabbi, you know, this is your president. He supports the shul. Why did you, override him? He said, look, the president will come back. But let me tell you a story. You see, in 1940, my wife and I lived in Poland. The war broke out, and on Rosh Hashanah, the Germans came into Poland, and we had to run away. We ran from Poland to Russia. We crossed the border, we got into Russia, and I had no passport, no Russian passport. Very soon after, I was caught by the Russians, and they said, I'm a spy. I'm a spy from Poland. I'm coming to give over all the secrets of Russia to Poland. They bring me to court, and the judge begins to tell me all of my sins. He says, look, we saved you from the hands of the Germans. We brought you into Mother Russia, and that's the way you repay us? For saving you from this fire, that you go and you now give over the secrets of Russia to Poland. And furthermore, you're a rabbi. And because you're a rabbi, you should follow your Torah. Your Torah says you have to follow the laws of the country, and you violated the laws of the country. He said, I knew I was finished. I knew it was over. But I figured to have one last chance to say something. I said, dear judge, you are 100% correct. I am a rabbi. And you are 100% correct that I do follow the Torah. And my Torah commands me to pray for the peace of my country. And there's no doubt that I pray for Russia, for Mother Russia every day. I would never sell any secrets to the enemy. The judge thinks about it for a moment. He sees the passion in the rabbi. And he bangs on the table. He says, "You're free to go." You can't believe it. It's impossible. It's never happened before. And as the entire courthouse clears out, and the judge is about to leave, he walks over to the rabbi, puts a piece of paper in his hand, and walks out. The rabbi opens the paper, and he reads, the judge is inviting him to his house. He has the address. Okay, so he goes to the judge's house, knocks on the door, and a woman with a sheitel opens the door. A religious woman. He walks into the house. He sees the judge. He's wearing a yarmulke and tzitzis. The judge says, "Sit down. I want to tell you something." You see, many years ago, I was drafted to the Russian army. And before I went to the Russian army, my father brought me to the Rebbe Rashab, to the 5th Chabad Rebbe. The Rebbe sat me down and he said to me the following: "You should know you're going to go to the army. I cannot stop it. But I want you to promise me the following, that when you rise in your positions and you get stronger and stronger and go higher and higher, you will never forget that you are a Jew. And when you have the opportunity to do a favor for another Jew, make sure you do that favor. And number 2, whenever you have the opportunity, you put on tzitzis, because that will remind you that you are a Jew." And so said the judge. I was drafted to the Russian army, and very quickly I went higher and higher in rank, and soon I was asked to be a judge. And any opportunity that I have, I put on my tzitzis, as the Rebbe Rashab told me to do. And then today you come into my courtroom, and I see the entire courthouse filled, and they want to see blood. And there's no way for me to get out of this. And I said to myself, "You're in big trouble. But what can I do? I have no other choice." And I was about to say, "You're guilty," and the Rebbe Rashab appeared right in front of me. He's standing right in front of me. And he's telling me, "Remember, when you have a chance to do a favor for another Jew, you make sure you do him that favor." When I saw the Rebbe Rashab standing right in front of me, I had no choice. I had to say, "You're not guilty. And that's why I let you free." This rabbi is now in Williamsburg. And he said this Chabad Chassid came in to speak. The president said, "Send him out." I was about to send him out. And the Rebbe Rashab is standing right in front of me. And he's saying to me, "When you see another Jew and you can do him a favor, you make sure you do him the favor." And this is the meaning of the parsha. God takes us by the hand, and he's standing right in front of us. And he's saying, "Uvachayto b'chayim." Do yourself a favor. Choose life. And if you don't understand it, I'm taking you by the hand. And I'm standing right in front of you. Uvachayto b'chayim. Choose life. So this is the blessing to all of us, to have a Shana Tova Musuka, a year that is good, a year that is sweet. Uvachayto b'chayim. We should choose life, and God should give us life. A life that we see with our very own eyes, the beauty and the sweetness in the year to come.